At my graduation, my name echoed through the auditorium while 3 front-row seats sat empty, reserved for a family who never showed. While I walked the stage alone, they were across town, screaming at a Super Bowl game, posting photos, laughing, celebrating everything except me. I held it together until the parking lot, where one message shattered the last illusion I had left. I didn't know it yet, but what they did next would expose a betrayal far darker than missing my ceremony. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. The morning of my graduation began with the kind of foolish hope I should have known better than to hold. I woke before my alarm, nerves buzzing under my skin like static, the cheap fabric of my rented gown hanging from the closet door like a promise I had earned with 6 years of night lectures, early shifts, aching sacrifices, and quiet victories no one ever saw. I brewed coffee in the dark, letting the warmth fill the kitchen, letting myself imagine, just for a fragile second, that maybe today my family would show up for me the way I had spent my whole life showing up for them. I wasn't expecting a parade. I wasn't expecting tears, or balloons, or a cheesy sign with my name on it. All I prayed for, was the bare minimum. My mother's soft smile in the audience, my father lifting a hand in that casual wave of his, my brother pretending he wasn't bored. Tiny gestures normal families took for granted, gestures that said, "We're here, you matter to us." Instead, as I slipped into the only pair of heels I owned, secondhand, scuffed at the toe, worn for job interviews no one helped me prepare for, my phone lit up with a group chat I'd been trying to ignore. They weren't asking what time the ceremony was. They weren't asking where to park or if I needed anything. No, they were arguing about Super Bowl snacks. My mother sent a picture of her famous dip, perfectly arranged on the coffee table, captioned with 3 exclamation points. My father joked about which team would disappoint him. My brother Mason bragged about betting on the game. Not one mention of my graduation day, not one word of support. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that they were pretending not to be nervous for me, that maybe they'd surprise me by arriving early with flowers and wide smiles. I clung to that thought like it was the thread holding my whole morning together. At the auditorium, the air buzzed with warmth and pride. Parents argued playfully about camera angles. Kids darted between legs. Bouquets rustled. There were sparkly balloons and hand-painted signs and families who looked like they'd been waiting years to scream their child's name. My row was near the front, and waiting for me, printed neatly and unmistakably, were 3 front-row seats with my last name taped to the backs. 3 seats for the people I'd spent years trying to impress, proof, tangible and hopeful, that someone somewhere expected them to show up. I sat down, smoothing my gown. I checked my phone. Nothing. I told myself they were on the road, that maybe they were parking, maybe they were running late. They'd walk in any moment, breathless and apologetic, but present. That hope, I held it like a bruise I kept pressing. The lights dimmed, the dean stepped onto the stage, families hushed, phones lifted, cheers swelled, the ceremony began, and the 3 seats beside me remained empty. Then my phone buzzed again. I checked instinctively. Maybe it was them. Maybe they were hurrying in. Instead, another picture popped up. A photo of the living room, the TV blaring pre-game commentary. My mother smiling beside a tray of wings. My father holding up a beer. Mason throwing up a victory sign like he just won something. They weren't coming. They had never planned to come. The truth sat heavy on my chest, thick and suffocating. For the rest of the ceremony, the cheers for other graduates felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. When my name was finally called, Annabelle Rowan, I stood on shaking legs, walked across the stage alone, and accepted a diploma in front of a sea of families who weren't mine. I smiled for the photo because the photographer asked me to, but the smile felt like something cracking. As soon as the ceremony ended, I skipped the reception and pushed through the doors into the cold February air. My breath fogged instantly, the kind of cold that stings your eyes and makes your bones feel hollow. People around me hugged their families, mothers cried, fathers beamed. My classmates posed for photos with siblings and grandparents and cousins. I walked alone to the back of the parking lot, heels clicking on the asphalt, the diploma slipping slightly in my hand. When I reached the far end of the lot, the wind cut sharper, as if it had been waiting for me there. My knees buckled. I sat on the curb, legs trembling, hands frozen around the diploma. My phone buzzed once more. Another photo. Another burst of laughter. Another reminder that the people I loved most couldn't be bothered to sit through a 2-hour ceremony for their own daughter. I didn't sob. I didn't scream. Instead, quiet tears slid down my cheeks, each one carrying years of being overlooked, unseen, underappreciated. Tears not just for the empty seats, but for every birthday they forgot, every milestone they downplayed, every time I needed them and told myself their absence wasn't personal. It was personal, every bit of it. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my gown and let out a small, bitter laugh. I crossed that stage alone while my family screamed at a football game they'd already watched 100 times. The wind pushed at my back, cars pulled out one by one, laughter faded. The world kept moving. I stayed on that curb until the ache in my chest burned itself into something else. Something sharper than sadness, stronger than disappointment, a tiny fierce spark of anger. Anger that didn't swallow me whole but steadied me, sparked something in me I didn't know had been asleep. Then, just as I was about to stand, my phone buzzed again. I didn't expect much. But it wasn't my family. It was Aunt Helena. Saw the ceremony photos online, proud of you, sweetheart, call me when you're free. It was nothing more than a line of text, but it felt like someone placing a hand on my shoulder in a room where I stood invisible. Someone had seen me. Someone cared enough to acknowledge my achievement. And in that cold parking lot, surrounded by empty spaces and fading echoes, something inside me shifted. Not broken, just awake. I looked down at my diploma and realized it wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer, a map. A direction out of the life I had been begging to belong to. I stood, exhaled, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going home. Not today. Not like this. And maybe not ever again. I didn't drive home after leaving the parking lot. My hands were still trembling too much to trust the wheel, and my chest felt like someone had laid a brick inside it. Instead, I sat in my car with the engine off, breath fogging the windshield, the graduation tassel brushing against my sleeve every time I moved. My family had chosen chicken wings and beer over the biggest day of my life, and if that wasn't the universe finally ripping the blindfold off, nothing ever would. I kept them just a desert down. After a few minutes, I turned the key and let the engine hum beneath me. Not sure where I was going, only knowing I couldn't return to the house where nothing about my existence mattered. I ended up driving aimlessly through downtown Hartford, past restaurants packed with families celebrating graduates who weren't carrying wounds like mine. Every window I passed showed a different version of the life I had imagined for myself. Parents hugging their daughters, siblings cheering, laughter bouncing off glasses. And then there was me, driving alone with a diploma seatbelted into the passenger side like it was the only thing in my life worth buckling in for. At a red light, my phone buzzed. I glanced, hoping, stupidly, that maybe, finally, one of them had texted something real. Instead, Mason had sent a photo of him holding up a plate of nachos with the caption, "Best party ever." No mention of me, no awareness of the ceremony happening without them. Not even a throwaway question like, "How'd it go?" That was when the sadness in my chest turned into something cleaner, sharper. An anger that wasn't destructive but illuminating. Like someone finally switched on a light in a room I'd been stumbling around in for years. I turned the car onto a quiet side street and parked. Snow lingered in the gutters, dirt speckled and melting, but the air was still cold enough to nip at my skin as I stepped out. I needed air, distance, space to breathe. I walked until the cold numbed my fingers, until the sting of the wind felt like permission to feel everything I'd tried to swallow. When I pulled out my phone again, it wasn't to check on them. It was to reroute myself, to choose myself. And staring at that blank search bar, I knew exactly what to type: Colorado retreats. I had saved them months ago during one of those nights when sleep wouldn't come, and I wondered what life might feel like if I wasn't constantly carrying everyone's burden. Places where people went to rest, recover, and remember who they were before life carved them down to nothing. I clicked the first listing that matched the image in my mind: a lodge tucked against a pine-covered slope overlooking a frozen lake. Peace, quiet, a place where no one would barge into my room asking for money, a place where I'd never be the background character in my own life. I booked the flight before I could lose courage. One way, no return date. My hands steadied as I typed my card information. My breath deepened. And when the confirmation email hit my inbox, the ache in my chest loosened just enough for a sliver of hope to slip through. I drove home only long enough to pack. My apartment was dim, the living room still decorated with the balloons I'd bought myself the night before, so the place wouldn't feel so empty when I got home from graduation. I looked at them, all still floating, cheerful, clueless, and felt a pinch behind my ribs. I deflated them one by one, letting the rubber crumple into my hands, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I wouldn't pretend anymore. I wouldn't decorate the silence with things meant to distract from loneliness. I packed with quiet efficiency: jeans, sweaters, the notebook where I kept every idea for my future, the folder with copies of my transcript and diploma. I almost left my family photos behind. Then I took one last look at them. The ones with forced smiles, tilted heads, eyes that never turned toward me, and slid the frames into a drawer instead. Not thrown away, just paused. I zipped up my suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly, reminding myself this wasn't running, it was choosing. For once, I wasn't leaving because I'd failed them. I was leaving because they'd failed me. When I boarded the early morning flight, Hartford's skyline still slept beneath a dull gray sky. I pressed my forehead to the window as the plane lifted off, watching buildings shrink into specks until everything I'd known felt small enough to let go of. Colorado's mountains greeted me hours later like they'd been carved for another lifetime. One where girls like me didn't have to earn their family's love through unpaid bills and emotional labor. At the retreat, the receptionist said my name with a kind of warmth that felt foreign. "Welcome, Annabelle. We're glad you're here." No one had ever said my name like that, soft, intentional, like I wasn't an inconvenience or an afterthought. The room was simple but beautiful. Wooden beams across the ceiling, a fireplace, and a window overlooking a frozen lake where the sunlight glinted like scattered diamonds. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes, letting the silence soak into me, a silence without tension, a silence without walking on eggshells, a silence without wondering what version of me I needed to be to keep everyone else calm. I spent the morning wandering the property, breathing in pine and cold air until my lungs felt rinsed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't braced for impact. I wasn't waiting for the next demand. I wasn't a daughter or a sister or a fixer. I was just a woman standing at the edge of a frozen lake, finally feeling the weight slip off her shoulders. That night, wrapped in a fleece blanket, I checked my phone one more time. 15 missed messages, 13 from my parents. 2 from Mason. I didn't open them, not yet. Instead, I opened my banking app out of habit. I almost wished I hadn't, because within seconds, my breath stopped. There were transactions I didn't recognize. Store cards I'd never opened, lines of credit I'd never applied for, auto payments I hadn't authorized, My credit score had dipped. My financial history was riddled with inquiries, every one of them tied to the same dates my family asked me for just a little help. A cold wave crept through my chest, deeper and sharper than anything that had come before. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't neglect. This was theft, identity theft, from the people who skipped my graduation for a party. I stared at the screen, feeling the ground under my life shift again, but this time, something inside me didn't crumble. It crystallized. If the empty seats at my ceremony didn't wake me up, this did. If abandoning me wasn't enough to sever the last thread, this was the knife. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I had to do next. I wasn't just walking away, I was fighting back, and I wasn't going to lose. I didn't sleep at all that night. I lay in the retreat bed staring at the ceiling while the glow from the fireplace flickered across the wooden beams. The room was warm, calm, safe, the kind of place people came to heal, but my mind was on fire. Every unauthorized inquiry, every stolen line of credit, every memory of a family that took more from me than they ever gave. I kept replaying how easy I made it for them, because I wanted to believe they loved me, that they cared, that skipping my graduation was just another thoughtless moment, not a pattern. But the numbers on my credit report told a different story. They told the truth. And for once, I didn't look away. By morning, the anger had settled into clarity, clean, focused. I poured myself a cup of tea from the little kettle in the corner and opened my laptop. The steam rose between me and the screen, warm against my face, grounding me as I typed my Aunt Helena's number. She picked up on the second ring, voice soft but steady, like she already knew I needed something more than comfort. "Talk to me, sweetheart." I told her everything. My graduation, the retreat, the credit report, the accounts, the dates, the silence sitting so heavily in my chest it felt like a second heartbeat. She didn't gasp. She didn't interrupt with disbelief. She simply exhaled and said, "I hoped I was wrong." "You knew?" I whispered. "I suspected," she said. "I've seen them lean on you too much for too long. But this is beyond leaning." I waited for the sting of betrayal to rise again, but instead, something unexpected settled inside me. Validation. Someone else saw it. Someone else believed me without trying to justify their behavior. "What do I do?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "You need a lawyer, Annabelle. Someone who knows financial fraud, someone who will protect you. I'll text you a name." When the message came through with a contact, Carmen Reyes, LLC, I stared at it for a full minute, letting the weight of it settle. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was action. I booked an appointment immediately, noon, enough time to pack up, check out of the retreat, and drive into Denver, where Carmen's office was located. Before I left, I walked to the frozen lake one last time. The wind was sharp, but the cold cleared my head. I had spent years shrinking myself into a daughter they could use. That version of me was standing on the ice. The woman walking back toward the lodge was different. When I arrived at the law office, Carmen greeted me with a handshake firm enough to ground my spine. She was in her 40s, poised, sharp-eyed, the kind of person who had seen every type of deception families could invent. Her office smelled faintly of eucalyptus and leather, a combination I didn't know could feel so protective. "Tell me everything," she said, and I did. Not just the credit theft, not just the graduation. I told her about the years of emotional labor, the money they siphoned from me under the guise of emergencies, the unpaid bills I covered because it was easier than being made to feel guilty. She listened with a stillness that didn't interrupt. When I finished, she opened a folder. "Here's the truth," she said. "This isn't just identity misuse, it's fraud. And you are not responsible for the consequences of their choices. They are." The word responsible landed like a weight removed, not added. For years, I had been the emotional accountant of my family, tracking, balancing, smoothing everything over. Now someone was telling me it wasn't my job anymore. Carmen walked me through every step, freezing my credit, disputing fraudulent accounts, filing identity theft reports, starting the restraining order process. With each page she handed me, each explanation, each signature, I felt pieces of myself returning, pieces I didn't even know I'd given away. When we finished, she placed her pen down and met my eyes. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Even if it feels heavy." "It doesn't feel heavy," I whispered. "It feels late." I left the office with a folder full of documents, my hands steady, my chest lighter than it had been in years. But clarity invites consequences, and mine came the moment I stepped into my apartment back in Hartford. My phone buzzed on the counter, my landlord's name lighting up the screen. I answered, assuming it was about rent. It wasn't. "Annabelle," she said quietly, "your parents are downstairs demanding access to your unit." My breath stopped. "They're what?" "They're saying it's an emergency," she continued. "Your father said something about needing financial documents. Your mother is crying." I didn't let them in, but I thought you should know they're refusing to leave. My pulse pounded in my ears. They hadn't even given me time to process. They hadn't apologized. They hadn't asked. They had come trying to salvage their access to my life, my resources, my name. "Do you want me to call the police?" she asked. I hesitated, but only for a second. "Yes," I said, "call them." Even through the phone, I heard my father scoff at the word police, as if I was the one being ridiculous, as if invading my home was somehow his right. The officers arrived before I even made it to the elevator. I watched from the top of the stairwell as they spoke to my parents, who immediately launched into theatrical explanations, my mother clutching her chest like she was the victim, my father waving his arms trying to sound authoritative. But entitlement collapses quickly when confronted with authority. Within minutes, the officers escorted them off the property with warnings about trespassing and legal boundaries. My father glared up at my window as they walked him to the sidewalk. My mother cried harder. Mason recorded the entire thing from the curb like he was documenting an injustice instead of a consequence. I watched until they were gone, my body pressed against the wall, the adrenaline finally settling. This was the moment I understood. They weren't going to stop. Not on their own. Not with guilt. Not with conversation. They'd only stop if I made them. The next morning, I met with Carmen again. She reviewed the trespassing report and nodded. "This strengthens your case," she said. "We'll file the restraining order today." I signed the final form with a hand that didn't shake. When the judge approved the temporary order, I felt the first taste of safety I'd ever known. Not emotional safety, practical, legal safety backed by consequences. A few days later, an email from Portland arrived with an offer. A job, a new beginning, a lifeline. I accepted before doubt could creep in. I packed my apartment into boxes, returned my keys to the landlord, and boarded a plane headed toward a life I was finally choosing. For weeks, Portland felt like breathing without a weight on my ribs. I rebuilt, I healed, I grew into myself. But healing often leads you straight to the moment you never expected, when the people who broke you come crashing back into your life one last time. I didn't know it yet, but mine would come on a stage in front of hundreds of people with microphones, cameras, and my family storming down the aisle screaming my name. And it would be the first time in my life I didn't shrink, I rose. Portland softened me in ways I didn't expect. Not by erasing the pain, but by giving it space to breathe. My apartment overlooked the Willamette River, the water moving slow and sure, like time itself had decided to stop rushing me. Every morning, sunlight spilled over the desk where I worked on spreadsheets and proposals. And in the quiet between emails, I felt pieces of myself click back into place. It didn't happen all at once. Healing rarely does. But little by little, the knots loosened. My anxiety stopped tightening my chest every time my phone buzzed. My shoulders didn't climb up to my ears when someone asked if I was okay. My voice didn't tremble when I said no. I found a rhythm. I took walks on the waterfront after work. I bought myself a plant and didn't kill it. I discovered a local bakery that made croissants so good they pulled a quiet laugh out of me the first time I tasted one. I slept through the night without dreaming of my family's voices clawing at the edges of my rest. People at work respected me, listened to me, asked for my opinion like it meant something, and for the first time in my life, I believed them. I didn't expect any of it. Not the calm, not the quiet, not the steady rise of confidence that felt foreign, but welcome. I didn't expect the promotion either. It happened 2 months after I arrived. My manager, Marcus, called me into his office, his expression serious but kind. "You've rebuilt processes in weeks that other people take months to understand," he said. "You're not just good at your job, Annabelle, you elevate everyone around you." The words landed in a place inside me that had been hollow for years, a place my family never touched, never tried to fill. When he slid the new contract across the table, my hands shook. Not from fear, but from realizing I had done this alone, completely alone. I breathed out slowly as I signed, feeling the weight of a future I'd built with no applause, no validation, and no safety net. That night, I sat on my balcony with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the city lights shimmer across the river. A warm breeze lifted strands of hair around my face, and I let myself feel it fully. The quiet triumph, the independence, the peace. I whispered into the dark, I made it out. But life has a way of testing whether you truly believe the things you say out loud. And my test arrived the next morning in the form of an email invitation from a national leadership conference. They wanted me to speak on financial boundaries, on personal resilience, on walking away from toxic systems disguised as family support. I stared at the screen for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it. Speaking publicly about my life felt like dragging old wounds into the light. But Carmen's voice echoed in my mind. Your story might save someone who thinks they're alone. So I accepted. The conference hall in Portland was gorgeous. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft golden light spilling across rows of chairs, a stage framed by tall indoor plants that made the space feel less intimidating. But my stomach churned all morning, even as I checked in backstage. Even as the event coordinator pinned a tiny mic to my blazer. Even as people took their seats with notebooks and coffee cups and polite smiles. When my name was announced, the applause wasn't thunderous, but it was warm. It wrapped around me gently, steadying my breathing as I stepped into the light. I rested my hands on the podium, felt the smooth wood under my palms, and inhaled. "Thank you for being here," I began. "Today I want to talk about something difficult. What it means to hold financial boundaries with the people you love." I told them about my graduation day, about the empty seats, the parking lot tears, the retreat, the credit report. I watched eyes soften across the room, nods forming here and there. I was 5 minutes in, finally steady, finally finding my voice, when the crash at the back of the ballroom sliced the moment clean in half. At first it sounded like someone dropped a tray, but then came a voice I knew as intimately as my own pulse. Loud, sharp, angry. "That's our daughter!" My blood turned cold. My father's voice echoed across the hall, rattling through the air like a broken bell. My hand froze on the podium. The audience shifted, heads turning toward the commotion. And before I could process what was happening, the doors burst open. My family stormed in. My father red-faced, my mother already in tears. Mason recording everything on his phone like he was documenting a scandal for social media. The room fell silent. My father pointed at me as he marched down the aisle. "She abandoned us," he thundered. ran off to get rich while we struggled." Gasps rippled through the audience. My mother clutched her sweater dramatically. "Annabelle, sweetheart, please," she cried. "Talk to us. You're tearing this family apart." Chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "Is this part of the speech?" I stood frozen behind the podium, heart hammering, while the three people who should have protected me my entire life turned into a spectacle in front of hundreds. Mason stepped forward, phone still raised. "Tell them how you froze our accounts," he shouted. "Tell them how heartless you are." My throat tightened. My palms dampened, my old instincts clawed up my spine. Apologize, de-escalate, shrink, disappear. But underneath the fear was something else. Something steadier, something I had built in the mountains of Colorado, on the banks of the Willamette, in the quiet moments when I chose myself over them. I straightened slowly and leaned into the microphone. My voice didn't shake. "Security," I said calmly. "They are violating a court order. Please remove them." The room went still. My father froze mid-step. My mother's face collapsed in shock. Mason's phone wavered. But before security could even reach them, a voice thundered from the doorway. "Douglas Rowan and Mason Rowan?" A detective stepped inside holding a folder thick with documents. "We have warrants for financial fraud and identity misuse. Step forward." The air split open. The entire audience erupted into whispers. My father sputtered, "This is insane. She's our daughter." The detective didn't blink. "Family does not excuse criminal behavior, sir." As officers cuffed my father and brother, my mother tried to rush toward me. "Annabelle, please stop this. We need you." I looked her dead in the eyes. "You never needed me," I said. "You needed my credit." Her face crumpled, not with remorse, with fear. Fear of consequences she never thought she'd face. Security ushered them out while the entire room watched in stunned silence. When the chaos finally settled and the doors closed behind them, I returned to the microphone. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. "As I was saying," I continued softly, "today we're going to talk about boundaries." The applause that followed didn't just fill the room. It filled something inside me that had been empty for years. When the applause finally softened and the conference lights dimmed for the next speaker, I slipped backstage with my pulse still thudding against my ribs. Not in panic, those days were behind me, but from the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. I had walked through fire in front of an entire ballroom, and for the first time in my life, I didn't come out burned. I came out clean. Carmen was already waiting for me behind the curtains, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes blazing like someone who had expected chaos, but not that level of it. "I knew they'd act out," she said, lowering her voice. "But I didn't think they'd try to publicly ambush you." I let out a long breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I didn't either." She softened, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. "But you handled it. And you handled them. You should be proud." Proud. It still felt like a foreign word, like a borrowed coat I wasn't sure I was allowed to wear. But today it fit. After the event ended, people approached me one by one, thanking me, sharing pieces of their own lives. A woman told me she'd spent years supporting a brother who never thanked her. A man admitted his parents had drained his savings without him realizing it. Another said he'd been afraid to cut ties with family because he thought love meant sacrifice. Their words landed on me gently, like snow collecting on a windowsill, soft, quiet, but undeniable. They didn't see me as someone dramatic or unreasonable. They saw me as someone who survived, someone who chose herself, someone who fought for her own name when others tried to ruin it. I left the building feeling whole. Not patched together, not temporary, whole. Portland's air felt different when I stepped outside, fresher, cooler, like the city itself exhaled with me. The sky was pale blue, streaked with thin clouds, and the hum of traffic felt strangely comforting. I walked a few blocks with my hands stuffed in my pockets, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. I expected a wave of sadness or guilt or regret to hit me once the adrenaline faded, but the opposite happened. I felt light, untethered. For the first time since childhood, my nervous system wasn't on high alert, waiting for the next emotional ambush. I got back to my apartment, kicked off my heels, dropped my bag by the couch, and stood there for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. A week ago, silence would have scared me. Silence meant something was brewing. Silence meant my father was in a mood. Silence meant I'd failed in some way I didn't understand. But today, the quiet was mine. A friend, not a threat. I put water on the stove for tea and curled up on the couch with a blanket draped over my legs. The stillness ran deep, softening every tight corner inside me. Eventually, I reached for my phone. Not with dread, not with fear, but with a strange sense of closure settling beneath my skin. There were 47 unread texts. I scrolled through them only far enough to see where they began. Mom, you ambushed us. Dad, I can't believe you did this, Mom. You're ungrateful. Mason, you'll pay for this. Mom, you humiliated us. Not one message, not one asked if I was safe or okay or breathing after the public disaster they caused. I clicked select all. Then, delete, gone. All of it. I blocked every number, one by one, breathing out with each confirmation. When I reached my mother's contact, the name I had stared at for years, hoping someday she'd choose me, I paused. Then I tapped block. My phone finally went silent. Not empty, not lonely, just peaceful. The kettle whistle broke the quiet, and I stood, poured tea, and let the steam rise into my face. I thought about the girl crying in the graduation parking lot, diploma slipping through her fingers. I thought about the woman staring at fraudulent accounts tied to her name. I thought about the version of me who walked into therapy begging someone to help her make sense of a family that thrived on taking. She deserved this moment, all of it. That night, I slept deeply, wrapped in a heaviness that felt more like rest than exhaustion. The next morning brought a quiet I was learning to trust. I watered my little plant, still alive, still pushing out new green leaves like a tiny celebration, and sat at my kitchen table watching sunlight spill across the wood. My mind drifted to the restraining order, the potential charges, the detective's voice echoing in the ballroom. I expected to feel guilt or panic or fear. Instead, there was only clarity. They had taken from me for years my credit, my opportunities, my peace, my milestones. Protecting myself wasn't a crime. What they did was. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed with an email from Carmen. Update on your case, please call when available. I took a sip of tea, steadied myself, and hit dial. She answered on the first ring. Good news, she said. The charges are moving forward, and the judge is considering extending all protections indefinitely. I closed my eyes, relief sliding down my spine. Thank you, I whispered. Really? Don't thank me, she replied. You did the hard part. You stood up to them. After the call, I sat with my tea until it went lukewarm, processing the fact that the people who raised me were now facing consequences for choices they made, choices they never once apologized for, choices they blamed me for, choices they expected me to hide. But I wasn't hiding anymore. Days passed, then weeks. The peace held, my new job flourished, my friendships deepened. I cooked more, slept more, laughed more. I even caught myself humming one morning while brushing my teeth, something I hadn't done since childhood. One afternoon, while walking home along the river, a single thought drifted into my mind, so gently, it didn't feel like a revelation at first. I'm safe now, safe from the guilt, safe from the manipulation, safe from the responsibility that was never mine to carry, safe from the version of myself who believed love meant surrender. When I got home, I opened my balcony doors and stepped into the golden hour breeze. The city glowed beneath me, soft and warm. I leaned on the railing and whispered into the wind, I'm free. It didn't sound dramatic. It didn't sound like a declaration. It sounded like a truth finally finding its voice. And for the first time in my life, my heart believed it. The morning after the conference felt strangely calm, like the city had paused just long enough for me to catch up to myself. Sunlight spilled through the blinds in thin, bright stripes, warming the hardwood floor and the blanket still wrapped around my shoulders. For the first time in months, I woke up without that immediate spike of fear, without checking my phone before I even sat up, without bracing for a crisis waiting in my notifications. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, waiting for the coffee to drip, letting the silence settle around me, comfortable and unthreatening. When my phone buzzed on the counter, my stomach didn't twist like it used to. I turned it over and saw a name I didn't recognize. Detective Alvarez. My pulse quickened, but not in panic. I answered. His voice was steady, formal. Miss Rowan, I wanted to inform you there have been new developments regarding the case. My fingers tightened around the phone. Are they out? They have posted bail, he said carefully, but there are conditions. They are prohibited from contacting you in any form and will notify you immediately of any violations. A small, controlled breath escaped me. Thank you, I murmured. He paused before continuing. And Miss Rowan, your testimony at the conference helped victims feel seen. That's rare. Don't underestimate what you did. The call ended, leaving me staring at the steam rising from my mug. There was pride under the fear now, an emotion I was still learning how to hold without dropping. I spent the day at work in a haze of productivity, getting more done in 6 hours than I had in the last 2 weeks combined. My coworkers noticed the shift. You look lighter, Tessa said, leaning over her desk with a smile, like someone finally took a backpack of bricks off you. Maybe they did, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. At lunch, she nudged my shoulder. You know you handled that conference like a superhero, right? I laughed softly. I felt like a malfunctioning light bulb. Well, the rest of the world disagrees. You went viral. I froze. What? She spun her laptop toward me. There it was. A clip of me at the podium, voice steady, shoulders straight, staring down my family as security escorted them out. The caption read, "Woman stands up to family who stole her identity, then gives the speech of the year." Millions of views, thousands of comments, people calling me strong, brave, inspirational, words I never thought belonged in the same sentence as my name. My chest tightened, not in fear, but with a strange, almost painful gratitude. After work, I walked home through the downtown streets, the brisk air reddening my cheeks. I watched people hurry past, parents with kids, couples laughing, students talking loudly as they crossed the street. None of them knew me. None of them knew what I'd survived. Yet in a way, that anonymity felt like safety, freedom. By the time I reached my building, the sun had dipped behind the hills, casting the city in soft lavender light. I took the elevator up, carrying a small bag of groceries and the lingering echo of pride. When I stepped into my apartment, a faint hum filled the air. The refrigerator kicking on, the familiar rhythm of a place that had finally started to feel like mine. I set the groceries on the counter and took off my coat. That's when a soft shuffle sounded from the hallway outside my door. My body went rigid. The sound came again, slow, deliberate, far too close. I moved toward the peephole, pulse thudding in my ears. Then I froze before looking. I wasn't ready, not yet. I stayed perfectly still, listening. Another shuffle, a whisper, a voice, low, male, eerily familiar. My brother, Mason. "Belle," he breathed outside the door. My blood ran cold. "Belle, I know you're in there." No, they weren't allowed within 300 feet of me. They weren't allowed to knock, to wait, to whisper my name like they still owned any part of my life. My hands shook as I backed away from the door, reaching for my phone on the kitchen counter. Before I could dial, he spoke again, louder, more desperate. Dad said we should try one more time. Just open the door, please. My eyes burned with a sudden wave of anger, hot, bright, cleansing. I stepped closer, voice steady even as my hands shook. Leave, I said through the door, loud enough for the hallway to swallow it whole. Silence, then a small thud, his hand hitting the door. Bell. They're going to take everything from us. You can't let this happen. I didn't let anything happen, I shot back. You did. He pressed his forehead to the door. I could hear the hollow tap. Please, just open it. No, my voice didn't flinch. Not this time, not ever again. I dialed Detective Alvarez with trembling fingers. He's here, I whispered. Mason is outside my apartment. The detective's tone hardened instantly. Stay inside. Officers are minutes away. Keep talking to me. So I did. I stayed on the line while my brother lingered outside, whispering apologies that weren't apologies, pleading for help he didn't deserve, begging for mercy he'd never shown me. The moment police turned the corner of the hallway, he bolted, his footsteps slapping against the floor as officers shouted after him. I sank against the wall, phone still to my ear. You're safe, the detective said. We'll handle the rest. After they left, my apartment felt even quieter than before. Too quiet. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the tap, splashed cold water on my face, and stared into the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the Annabelle who begged for scraps of affection. She wasn't the girl who cried in the graduation parking lot. She wasn't the daughter who kept fixing what wasn't hers to fix. She looked shaken, yes, but strong, grounded, done. I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the stillness wrap around me. Then I reached for my journal, a habit I'd started in Colorado, and wrote just one sentence. I choose me, again and again. Minutes later, exhaustion pulled me under, and I slept with the lights on, too tired to care. When I woke the next morning, Portland rain tapped softly against my window, brushing away the last shadows of fear. My phone buzzed, a message from Carmen. They have him. I closed my eyes. Relief washed over me like warm water. One by one, the ties that held me captive were breaking. And for the first time, the future felt not just possible, but wide open. The next few days unfolded in a strange blend of calm and tremor, like my life had split into two parallel timelines. One where I was living quietly in Portland, going to work, taking evening walks, learning the shape of a city that didn't expect anything from me. And another where storms still raged hundreds of miles away. Storms that carried my family's voices, their choices, their consequences. But for the first time, I wasn't standing in the center of any of it. I was watching from a distance, shielded by laws, by boundaries, and by a version of myself I barely recognized. One who didn't shrink anymore. On Tuesday morning, a package arrived. Small, nondescript, no return label. My heart jumped as I picked it up from the lobby mailbox. There was a time when receiving something unexpected from my family would have filled me with hope. Maybe an apology, maybe a gesture, maybe a sign they were finally ready to meet me halfway. But now, the hope was gone, burned out, replaced by caution that felt earned, almost instinctive. I brought the box inside and set it on the kitchen counter, half expecting it to explode emotionally if not physically. After a long breath, I slid the tape open with a key. Inside was a stack of envelopes tied together with twine, old, yellowed, uneven. Letters. My breath hitched. The handwriting on the top envelope was shaky, familiar in a distant way. My grandmother's handwriting. I sat at the table, hands trembling for reasons I couldn't name, and untied the twine. The first letter was dated 10 years earlier. Annabelle, sweetheart, I know life in that house isn't easy. I see more than you think I see. My chest tightened. I scanned the lines. Gentle warnings, subtle acknowledgments, quiet truths about the imbalance I grew up in. As if she wanted to tell me she understood, even when no one else did. Another letter. Your parents love you, but they don't know how to show it right. They lean too hard on you because you're the sturdy one. It isn't fair, but it isn't your fault. My eyes stung. The next one cut deeper. I hope you find the strength to build a life that belongs to you. Not to them, to you. I sat there for what felt like an hour, reading each letter carefully, absorbing every word like a balm and a blade at the same time. When I reached the last one, dated just a few months before she died, my breath stirred in my throat. If they ever hurt you beyond repair, leave and don't look back. You are worth more than their dependence. You are meant for more than their shadow. I pressed the paper to my chest, letting grief move through me in slow, heavy waves. It wasn't just about my grandmother. It was the realization that someone had seen me all along. Someone who hadn't turned away. Someone who hadn't dismissed me. Someone who had known the truth but stayed silent to keep peace she never should have been responsible for. I didn't notice the tears until they stained the page. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and whispered, "I wish you were here." The room felt still after that. Still but not empty, like she was somewhere in the words, tucking her warm hand over mine. I packed the letters gently into a drawer in my bedroom, each one a reminder that my story didn't start in abandonment. It started with someone who believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself. The next day at work, things took an unexpected turn. My supervisor called me into her office. A bright space with potted plants, framed certificates, and a view of the river that always made the sunlight dance. She gestured for me to sit, her expression unreadable. "I saw your conference video," she said. My stomach tensed. "I hope it didn't cause issues," I murmured. "No," she said softly. "Actually, it inspired a lot of us." I blinked. "What?" She leaned forward. "You spoke with clarity, strength, and emotional intelligence. Those are leadership qualities, Annabelle, not just personal bravery." My breath caught. She slid a folder across the desk. "We're restructuring the team. I'd like you to step into a regional supervisory role. It's more responsibility, more visibility, and frankly, something I think you're ready for." For a moment, the world tilted. Not dramatically, just enough to feel its new shape. "Are you sure?" I whispered. She smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." I walked out of her office stunned, the folder clutched against my chest, feeling like something inside me had cracked open. Not the way it had in the graduation parking lot, in the courtroom, or outside my apartment door. This time, it cracked open like a window, letting in fresh air, like relief, like becoming. That evening, I took the long route home, crossing a pedestrian bridge stretched over the Willamette River. The water moved lazily beneath me, reflecting city lights that shimmered like warm gold. I stood there for a while, leaning against the railing, feeling the breeze against my cheeks. A message buzzed on my phone. Unknown number. For a heartbeat, fear jolted up my spine. I opened it. "Ms. Rowan, this is Detective Alvarez. Wanted to update you privately before the official notice was mailed. The district attorney is moving forward with full charges, felonies. It won't be quick, but you won't have to testify again unless you want to. You're protected. Fully." My knees softened, not out of weakness, out of release. I typed back, "Thank you." Then I stood there, watching the river glow under the evening skyline, letting everything sink in. The letters, the promotion, the legal protection, the slow but steady reclamation of a life I thought I'd never have. But the moment that hit hardest came an hour later as I sat on my couch eating leftover pasta and scrolling through my notifications. A single comment appeared under a clip of my speech. "Thank you for telling this story. I left my family last year. I thought I was alone." Followed by another, "You don't know me, but your courage helped me today." And another, "Please keep talking. We need people like you." I set my phone down, pressing my palm against my sternum as something warm spread through me, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the kind I'd chase to earn my family's approval, but something quieter, deeper, rooted in truth rather than desperation. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. And not just living, I was building something. Something meaningful, something mine. Before bed, I stood at the window again, watching raindrops slide down the glass in slow, shimmering trails. You're allowed to be happy, I whispered to myself. You're allowed to be free. The truth settled into me like a seed finally meeting soil. And for the first time, I believed it. The morning after Detective Alvarez's message, I woke before sunrise to a strange feeling I couldn't name at first. Not fear, not grief, not tension. It was stillness. The kind that doesn't demand anything from you. I lay there for a few minutes, letting the soft dawn light filter through the blinds, feeling my breath move in and out with an ease I wasn't used to. For so long, waking up meant bracing myself for someone else's needs, someone else's emergencies, someone else's disappointment. But now, the air around me felt different. Like the future wasn't pressing down on me, it was widening in front of me. I brewed coffee slowly, savoring the smell. No rush, no expectations, just presence. Then, as I sat at the small table with my mug warming my hands, my phone buzzed again. For a brief moment, old anxiety flickered in my chest. Not again, I thought. Not another fire to put out. But the notification didn't come from family, from police, from banks, or from anything tangled in my past. It was a message request on social media. A woman named Melissa had written, "Your story helped me file a restraining order today. I didn't know I was allowed to walk away." I read it twice, my pulse steady but my throat tightening. Then another message. "I've been living the same nightmare, thank you for speaking out." And another. "I thought I was broken for leaving, you showed me I wasn't." I had closed my eyes, letting their words wash over me. These strangers who suddenly felt like distant echoes of versions of myself I used to hide. I replied to each one slowly, carefully, with gratitude and gentleness. When I finished, I sat there with a strange ache building in my chest. Not the heavy, drowning kind that followed my family, but something lighter, like a pressure pushing me upward instead of pulling me down. Maybe my story wasn't just mine anymore. Maybe it was something larger, something useful, something healing. Before I could explore that thought further, my work email chimed. A short message from my supervisor. "Would love to discuss your new role today. Could you stop by after lunch?" Instead of dread, a quiet thrill flickered through me. I glanced at the folder on my desk, the promotion packet I'd barely processed the day before, and let myself smile. Maybe the world wasn't collapsing around me anymore. Maybe it was opening. That afternoon, as I walked out of the office with a confirmed transition date, a higher salary, and a development track that felt like both validation and a new beginning, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail from my mother. For a moment, everything inside me stilled. I stood in the hallway, staring at the screen, feeling the old panic claw at the back of my mind. But I didn't let it take over. I stepped outside into the crisp air, sat on a nearby bench, and pressed play. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Annabelle, things are getting worse. We need to talk. Your father, he's not doing well. Listen, he's overwhelmed. We're falling apart. We just need your help. No apology, no acknowledgement of the damage. Just need. Always need. Always take." I deleted the voicemail, not angrily, not dramatically, just decisively, because someone finally had to choose me, and it was going to be me. That night, I went to a small open mic event one of my coworkers invited me to. I almost didn't go. I'd spent so long hiding from the world that stepping into a crowd felt unfamiliar, but something nudged me forward. A singer performed with a voice so raw it made the room fall quiet. A poet read about clawing her way out of a childhood she barely survived. A comedian joked about therapy with a vulnerability that made everyone laugh and ache at the same time. And as I sat there, surrounded by strangers pouring truth into a microphone, something inside me stirred. When I got home, I opened my laptop without overthinking. The cursor blinked on the blank screen. I didn't know what I was doing until I started typing. My story. Not the legal version, not the courtroom version, not the quiet version, the real version, the trembling version, the version where I was the girl in the parking lot staring at 3 empty seats, where I was the woman on the retreat bed discovering 10 stolen lines of credit, where I was the speaker on a stage facing a family who believed they could crash my life one more time. The words flowed like they'd been trapped behind a dam for years, not perfect, not polished, just honest. When I finished the first chapter, my chest felt lighter, not healed, but healing. I closed the laptop with a small, tired smile. The next morning, everything shifted again, this time in a way I didn't expect. As I stepped out of my apartment, a voice called from behind me. "Annabelle?" I turned. Detective Alvarez stood near the stairwell, holding a folder. My stomach tightened. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She shook her head. "Actually, no. This is good news." She handed me the folder. The DA added restitution claims. If the case closes in your favor, you'll be reimbursed for every fraudulent account tied to your name. My breath caught. "All of it?" "Every cent," she replied. "You won't carry their damage any longer." I nodded, swallowing hard. The weight that lifted from my shoulders felt physical. She hesitated before stepping away. "You should know something else," she added. "You're handling this with more strength than most people I've seen in cases like yours." I wasn't sure what to say. Compliments about resilience always felt strange, like someone admiring the shine of armor without noticing the dents beneath it. "Thank you," I said quietly. When she left, I stood there for a moment, letting the sun warm the back of my neck. Reimbursed, protected, promoted, seen. Step by step, life was stitching itself back together. Not perfectly, not neatly, but in a way that felt deliberate, like the beginning of a new story instead of the epilogue of an old one. That evening, I bought myself dinner from a little Thai place I'd been meaning to try. On the walk home, I carried the warm takeout container in my hands, feeling almost light, a feeling I wasn't familiar with, a feeling I wanted to protect. When I reached my building, an older woman from the 3rd floor smiled at me in the hallway. "You look brighter," she said kindly. "I hope whatever change stays that way." I thanked her, my heart swelling in a way that felt embarrassingly tender. Back in my apartment, I set the food on the counter and turned on a soft lamp. The glow filled the room like a small hug. I sat at the table, opened my laptop again, and stared at the blank document. A question rose quietly in my mind. What if I turned this into something real, something people could hold, something that helped someone the way strangers had helped me? My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from possibility. What if I wrote a book? I let the idea settle, expanding in my chest like warm air filling a balloon. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. Some decisions don't happen in a single moment. They bloom, slowly, carefully. When I finally began typing again, it was with intention, with purpose, with the quiet certainty that my voice no longer belonged in the shadows my family built. It belonged here, on the page, in the world, in the hearts of people who understood what it meant to grow up unseen. I wrote until the room blurred with fatigue. I wrote until the ache behind my eyes begged for sleep. And when I crawled into bed, a single thought settled in beside me, steady and bright. Maybe this was what my grandmother saw in me all along. Not obedience, not resilience, but a voice, waiting for a place to land. And now, finally, it had one. The next few weeks unfolded in a way that felt almost surreal. like I was watching someone else live a life I had only imagined in fragments. Every morning I woke with a clearer mind, a steadier breath, a spine that felt just a little straighter than the day before. Healing, I learned, didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in moments, tiny, quiet, almost invisible, that began stringing themselves together into something solid. One of those moments arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was working from my kitchen table, surrounded by half-finished notes and the soft hum of my laptop. A new email notification popped up. The subject line read, "Your conference speech. Viral." I blinked at it twice. Viral? My stomach fluttered with a cautious mix of curiosity and disbelief. I clicked the email from the event coordinator. "Your talk has been shared over 400,000 times across platforms. We're getting requests for replays, panel invitations, and educational licensing. People are quoting you. People are using your name in essays. People are writing us saying your story made them make a call they were too afraid to make." I stared at the screen, my hands frozen. Not out of shock, but out of something deeper. Recognition. People weren't listening because my story was dramatic or sensational. They were listening because they'd lived versions of it, because something inside them had been waiting for someone else to say, "This is real. You're not imagining it. You're not alone." A warmth spread through my chest, soft and unhurried. Not pride, not validation, something quieter but stronger. Purpose. I closed the email slowly, letting the words settle inside me. My story, my pain, my choices, my truth had become a map for someone else, a key, a light. Maybe this was why everything had fallen apart the way it did. Maybe this was the work I had been meant to do all along. Later that night, while making dinner, I opened my laptop again. I reread the chapters I'd written and felt the same steady pulse in my chest, the same clarity. I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like the girl crying in a cold parking lot while a Super Bowl party replaced her graduation. I felt like a woman stepping into her own life for the very first time. And just as the thought formed, my phone buzzed, a new voicemail. I didn't want to listen, not out of fear, but out of disinterest. The way you feel about something that no longer has power over you. But curiosity won. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. "Annabelle, your mother isn't well. She's barely eating. Mason's dealing with legal trouble and he needs guidance. We're all trying to hold things together. If you're done punishing us, come home." There it was. No apology, not even close. Just more weight disguised as urgency. More expectation dressed up as guilt. More need delivered like a command. Punishing us. The words stung, not because I believed them, but because for so many years, guilt was the language of our family. But I wasn't fluent in it anymore. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't feel anything, not anger, not triumph, just distance, healthy distance. That night, I took a walk through the city, letting the cool air clear my mind. Portland at dusk had a softness to it, a quiet, thoughtful kind of beauty I hadn't appreciated before. Couples strolled by holding hands, the smell of fresh bread drifted from a nearby bakery, lights twinkled through the branches of old trees, and for once, I didn't feel misplaced in the world. I felt aligned. I sat on a bench near the waterfront, watching the water ripple beneath the dim glow of streetlights, and in that stillness, something inside me clicked into place. If my family couldn't meet me where I was, I wasn't obligated to shrink back down to where they wanted me to be. I wasn't required to fit their definition of daughter, of provider, of savior. I was allowed to redefine everything, and I was going to. 2 weeks later, I stood backstage at a second conference, the kind with polished name tags and cameras that streamed the event live. They'd asked me to speak specifically about financial independence after family-based exploitation. I had rehearsed my opening line, but as I stepped onto the stage, I didn't need any cue cards. The speech poured out of me like a truth I'd been waiting decades to articulate. I didn't talk about the legal process first. I talked about the loneliness, the guilt, the confusion, the emotional debris families like mine left behind. I talked about the night in the parking lot, the retreat, the discovery of fraud. I talked about boundaries, not as walls, but as lifelines. I talked about the difference between love and obligation. And near the end, I said something that wasn't in my notes, something that just rose in me unfiltered. Sometimes the family you're born into breaks you, I said, and sometimes the only way to save your life is to choose yourself, even if it means walking away. A hush fell over the room. When the applause finally came, it felt like a wave I didn't have to brace myself against. Afterward, people lined up to talk to me, not with praise, but with vulnerability. A man who grew up paying his parents' rent at 13, a woman whose sister stole her identity twice, a nurse who put her family through school only to be discarded when she needed help. Their voices were heavy with pain, but laced with something else. Relief, because someone had said out loud what they'd been suffocating under in silence. When I returned home that night, the first thing I did was open my laptop. I created a file titled "The Book I Needed at 18." Then I began writing again, not from anger, not from sorrow, from clarity, from strength, from truth. Words formed in sentences, sentences formed in chapters, chapters formed in beginnings. It wasn't a book about my family. It was a book about reclaiming your life after someone you loved tried to steal it. And as the days passed, the writing became easier, lighter, like breathing. But the world wasn't done testing me. One evening, as I finished editing a chapter, a gentle knock sounded at my door. My heart jumped, not out of fear, but curiosity. When I opened it, Helena stood there, my aunt, the one who saw me when no one else did. She held a small bag in her hands. "I was in town," she said. "Thought I'd stop by." I stepped aside and she hugged me without hesitation. A full, warm, grounding hug. One I didn't realize I desperately needed. After we sat down, she placed the bag on the table. Inside was a framed picture. Me, at 5 years old, sitting in her backyard eating a popsicle with a grin that swallowed half my face. "I kept this," she said softly. "Your mother didn't want it, but I knew someday you'd want to remember who you were before they dimmed your light." My throat tightened. I ran my fingers over the frame. The girl in the picture looked free, bright, hopeful. And I realized something quietly profound. I wasn't trying to become someone new. I was trying to return to her. Helena reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "for saving yourself." I swallowed hard. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Her expression softened. Not pity, but compassion. "Understanding isn't your responsibility. Healing is." I nodded, letting her words settle deep inside me. That night, after she left, I placed the picture on my desk, where I could see it while I wrote. And as I stared at it, something inside me shifted, softly, like a door unlocking. I wasn't the girl crying in the parking lot anymore. I wasn't the daughter begging for love. I wasn't the woman who let guilt design her life. I was someone new, someone whole, someone choosing herself again and again, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The morning after Helena's visit felt strangely different, like I had woken up in a life that fit me better than the one I had been wearing for years. Sunlight pushed through the blinds in thin gold stripes, warming the room in soft, gentle strokes. There was no heaviness pressing on my chest, no buzzing anxiety waiting to ambush me, no familiar dread curled beneath my ribs. Instead, there was a hum, quiet, steady, almost electric, as if my entire world was rearranging itself around a truth I finally believed. I wasn't running anymore. I was rebuilding. I made coffee, leaning against the counter while steam rose in delicate spirals. My phone buzzed with early notifications, emails from clients, messages from conference organizers, comments from people who'd watched my talk online and found pieces of themselves in it. But I didn't check any of them right away. Instead, I walked to the window and watched the city wake up. Cars rolled lazily through the streets. People hurried with scarves around their necks. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. It was ordinary life, quiet, unassuming, and somehow more beautiful now that it belonged to me. I opened my laptop, pulled up my manuscript, and read the last paragraph I'd written the night before. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who taught you to stay silent. I stared at the words, letting them settle inside me, not in a painful way, but in a way that felt grounding, like roots finally taking hold. I typed again, losing myself in the rhythm of the keys, letting the story flow through me with a clarity I had never experienced before. Hours passed without my noticing. The world outside my window shifted from gold to soft gray. My tea grew cold. My shoulders relaxed for the first time in years. And then, right as I was writing a chapter about reclaiming independence, my phone buzzed again. This time with a sound I had attached only to emergency contact. I frowned, crossing the room. When I saw the caller ID, my breath caught. Unknown number. My stomach tightened slightly. I almost let it ring, but something, curiosity, intuition, maybe closure, made me answer. Hello? Is this Annabelle Rowan? A calm voice asked. Yes, this is Officer Carver from the Hartford Police Department. A deep, cold stillness slid into my body. Not fear, just bracing. Your family attempted to file a complaint, he continued, stating that you had stolen money from them. However, he paused, flipping through papers I could hear in the background. After reviewing the restraining order, the fraud reports, and the identity theft evidence, the claim has been dismissed. My chest loosened. Thank you for letting me know, I said quietly. There's one more thing, he added. Given the severity of the situation, the district attorney is considering additional charges against your brother and father. You may need to testify if the case moves forward. I let out a slow, steady breath. If needed, I will. Understood. We'll keep you updated. When the line went silent, I set the phone down, carefully, as if the truth I had just heard might shatter if I moved too fast. Testify. Not to punish them, but to protect myself, to protect the version of me I was finally becoming. I stood in the quiet of my apartment, letting the reality settle. My family, after everything, still tried to twist the story, still tried to paint themselves as victims, still refused to accept responsibility, but none of it shook me this time. Not one part of me wanted to shrink or retreat. Instead, I felt that same warmth, the one that had been growing ever since Colorado, rise inside me again. Strength. After all the years of feeling invisible, I finally stood in a place where their manipulation couldn't touch me. And that was the moment I knew the story was shifting for good. Later that evening, I met Tessa at a small cafe near the river. She waved when she saw me, eyes bright. You look lighter, she said as we sat down, like something finally unclinched. Maybe it did, I admitted. I told her everything, about the police call, about the possibility of the case going to trial, about how none of it made me feel like collapsing the way it once did. She listened, nodding, sipping her latte. You know, she said softly, the hardest part of healing isn't walking away from the people who hurt you. It's realizing they never deserved the parts of you they took. Her words hit like a quiet thunder inside me. You're allowed to be whole now, she added gently. You don't have to keep proving you deserved better. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. She was right. And for the first time, I wanted better not to spite my family, but because I finally believed I deserved it. We talked about the conference, the book, the viral clips, the messages from strangers who saw themselves in my story. It was overwhelming and beautiful. When I returned home that night, I opened my inbox and found a message that felt like a full circle moment. A publishing house had seen my speech. They wanted a meeting. They were interested in my book. I reread the email twice, hands trembling, not from fear, but from awe. The life I had built from the ashes of my old one was beginning to take shape in ways I had never imagined. I closed my laptop and stood by the window again, watching the city lights shimmer against the dark sky. And that's when a different kind of realization washed over me. Not sharp, not painful, but strangely comforting. I didn't hate my family. I didn't wish them harm. I didn't want revenge. I just didn't want to belong to them anymore. That truth felt like freedom. The next morning, I mailed the official statement for the case. Calm, factual, precise. No emotion, no apologies, no hesitation. Then I returned to my manuscript. Page after page, my story grew. Not as a record of pain, but as a map for resilience, a blueprint for anyone who had been abandoned, used, or overlooked by the people who should have loved them most. Weeks passed, seasons shifted, and then one day I stood backstage at another event, this one bigger than the last, with a crowd twice the size and cameras broadcasting to thousands of viewers. The coordinator whispered, "You're next," and my heart began to drum gently in my chest, not from fear, from purpose. When I stepped onto the stage, applause rose instantly, warm, welcoming, alive. I gripped the microphone, took a steady breath, and scanned the room. So many faces waiting for words they needed, and for the first time, I felt ready. "My name is Annabelle," I began, "and once upon a time, my family skipped my graduation for a football game. But what they didn't know was that leaving me behind gave me the chance to walk forward into the life I was supposed to live." The audience leaned in, not because of the drama, but because of the truth. I continued speaking about independence, boundaries, healing, and the quiet courage of choosing yourself even when it terrifies you. And somewhere in the middle of that speech, as I watched people nod with tears in their eyes, I understood something that rewrote the entire story. My greatest accomplishment wasn't the degree, or the conference, or the promotion. It was the moment I realized I didn't need my family's presence to rise. I only needed my own. When the applause filled the room again, louder than before, I let it wash over me, not as validation, but as affirmation. I walked off the stage with a smile I hadn't felt since childhood, a real one, a free one. And as the doors closed behind me, the chapter of belonging to people who never chose me finally ended. The chapter of choosing myself had only just begun.